I'd entertain a motion to resume
So moved.
city council meeting.
Second.
Motion Shoot, second Freeman, that we resume the city council meeting. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? We are back in session. And we are off to council updates. Does staff have anything for council? Mary, Jeff, Brian? Anyone? Does council have anything for staff? That being the case, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Harrison, second Shoot, that we adjourn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We are in adjournment. Now, it's 10 till 9. We had to cut our work session short. So if there's additional questions, comments, please, this is the time to do it. Come to the podium, state your name, and we can continue the work session. If nobody's coming forward, we'll head to the house. But
I have one little comment.
okay.
Lee Moore, 521 East Dogwood. The only comment I had was on the whole thing. My concern with the CIP was not, I understood it, I can Google, so I knew what it was. and I didn't have any misunderstanding that it was expenditures being approved or anything like that. I knew that this was, you've got to do this kind of planning. My concern was that I didn't see a lot of citizen involvement encouraged beforehand, and this thing was going to be approved on October 20th unless a couple of people stood up and said something. So that's a concern of mine.
Yeah.
So I would really like to see more, I guess more community outreach and making sure that you have citizens involved in this process going forward. And secondly, I was a little bit concerned when it was presented to the Electric Utility Board that we don't currently have a director. So we're working off of old data, and it was never presented to us in any way to allow us to analyze anything. So we couldn't give you a recommendation as to what should be done for electric infrastructure. So that was a little bit concerning to me. I know based on history what we're doing and why we're doing it, and I think the programs that we're going to attack with this are fine. But it's still, if you look at it, it's a substantial amount of money, and we're talking $2 million, half of the CIP budget for 2015 is electric. So I just want to make sure that due diligence, at least in the future, is done so that we're making sure that we're spending that money in the right places. Right. There could be other projects that we're overlooking. So that's all I had.
Okay. I do want to just mention quickly, David Warm from Mark mentioned some of the things some of the pieces, and I know you were involved in some of those pieces, especially when it came to comprehensive plan development. Are things that we used, and anybody that took part in any of the ETC satisfaction survey, those are things that are tapped as well. Before I was an elected official, and when I was sitting out in the audience, I watched a couple of the CIPs progress through. Never saw the level of enthusiasm for participation in the CIP process. Christy could probably speak to that as well. This wasn't something where we were anticipating there was going to be a public outcry for let's get more citizen involvement, because that's not the way that we had seen it before. I think Tori could probably speak to that as well, because we were all, Amy and Tori were out in the chief seats.
I think there were a couple of issues on this particular CIP that were controversial, which is why you saw the sudden
Well, we've never really spent money before. It has, I mean, I think Debbie talked about it, it's been a wish list, so.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the first time we've actually isolated specific projects and said, these are the ones that we're gonna go after. So,
Right.
And we have actual funding or the capability to fund these projects, and so it's not just throwing stuff against the wall and just saying, well, we're not really gonna do anything with this anyway because, well, we don't have the money.
I like the idea that the mayor had earlier about putting together meetings like we had with the CIP, with the public, inviting the public in. I would even go one further and suggest that perhaps some kind of CIP citizen committee be formed and for the next one, and let citizens actually get in there and control, you know, what's going to be presented and to the city council for approval. So.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but the plan going forward now, we know we didn't have a vote. The plan going forward now is to take into account citizen input, to address some of the questions, and then come back in the spring, is that correct?
Correct.
So, mid to end of March. So in the meantime, while the remainder of the CIP is, I'm assuming that's what's gonna happen between now and March, is that we're gonna be fleshing out the CIP. Would it be potentially a possibility that we could convene a committee between now and then to keep them in the loop on this?
Well,
That's all I had.
Oh, thanks, Lee.
thanks, Lee. I'm not sure that it's out of the question. You know, it's funny because the thing I was going to say was that, you know, I know that the planning commission looked at the comprehensive plan every year because and I know that starting in about 2008, you know, they started looking at the CIP in the same way. And you know, I'm not against doing a committee, but we've got a bunch of pieces that are all, you know, this is going to be a decision for the governing body, but I think we've got a lot of citizen input built in already. At least one more meeting, maybe out in the what do you call it, atrium out there, where we can get a lot more people involved. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for involvement in the months of January and February and March. And it's going to be winter because, you know, spring doesn't hit until March 21st in our second city council meetings. And March is probably about that time, which is probably when we're really looking to be doing adoption.
Good.
So, you know, if the council wants to look at putting a committee together, having formed a committee before, can be a little cumbersome to get started on occasion. I'd like to make sure that it wouldn't be the case again, but I do think that first off, we've got a good head start because of what's been presented to us already, and I think there's going to be many more opportunities. But yeah, anytime we can get more citizen input, I'm all for it.
You know, I'll speak that very, very briefly, but I think what happened through this process that we learned is the strength of a citizen-led initiative.
I agree.
Where it's not something that City Hall is promoting, the council's really organizing, putting together, and really allows for citizen leadership to put those initiatives forward and really can accomplish just as much. And in some capacity, I think it was the fact that it wasn't the city that was promoting it. It was completely led by a group of citizens that cared enough to put the time and effort together. But so I'm not certain that that would be the direction. If you have individuals that want to take on the leadership role within the public as a whole to lead those sort of things, and we provide them tools, and what we learned is there may be a slowdown of some of these processes to allow that involvement. That's probably the one takeaway that we really have to put at the top. Then those citizen-led initiatives have time to do the diligence that they'd like to, present findings in the same sort of form that we have tonight, and then we learn from that before we come back to final resolution. So I almost promote more, or feel more comfortable with the citizen-led initiatives rather than us sitting here and saying, let's organize a task force and hope we get enough volunteers. I almost think there's strength in them doing it on their own. We've seen that in the past. Chris and I have sat in town hall meetings where there were 3 of us because it was town hall putting it together.
Yep.
People want to take on that on their own.
Lee, how do you feel about that, what he said?
I think he's right, on one hand. On the other, there's something to be said for what you and I did on the
Yeah.
BPU committee.
Absolutely.
Indeed, well, and maybe it's something where now that the initial heavy lifting is done, maybe there's an opportunity for somebody to come and be a guest at one of the citizen-led meetings, an observer, just another citizen of Gardner, not somebody that's supposed to be, that thinks they're running things
Well, and
from a citizen group.
I do want to point out that this was totally my, I'm not representing the group, this was just a Lee Moore thing, the suggestion and all that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Steve?
Yeah.
By all means.
Steve McNair, 528 North Elm. First off, I just want to say, great idea, in getting more involvement from citizens and soliciting those ideas. Tonight, and I'm speaking for myself, not the group at this point, I felt like this really kind of got some attention and the ball rolling on some issues. While a lot of these capital improvement things are much needed and worthy causes, I think one of the things that jumped off the page to me tonight was the priorities weren't assigned, or weights, or some type of a measuring system wasn't with each of these items, and that would have helped as we met and tried to assess some of these things. I think having priorities assigned to them would be a very helpful thing, because some of the infrastructure things, if we don't do those, are going to start crumbling and falling apart, and things that can be more discretionary could be pushed back a little bit or not done at all. And I think that's something that would be very helpful. And and Mayor, I liked your idea of encouraging the citizens groups to come forward. I think that's a worthy thing. But again, priorities and more transparency and more involvement from the citizenry would be a really good thing.
Yeah. And I'll piggyback on what you said, Heath. I'm completely in favor of the citizen-led initiatives. Don't get me wrong. I'd like to see us work more in a partnership, I think, from the standpoint of a collaborative effort with the citizens, especially when it comes to getting them information. I think that in some cases we've been somewhat lacking in that area, and being more proactive, getting them information, getting them what we judge as a department head judge priorities, as we set up a civic initiatives, that we get that out to them as quickly as we can so that they can give us that information. I think that we've got a group of citizens that want to weigh in. I mean, it's been shown. I mean, with 30, 35 citizens that were at these meetings, that's huge. I mean, that's a large amount of engagement there. I'd like to be able to.
There was a lot of time invested in that, and one last thing I might add is a little bit of granularity in some of these initiatives would be helpful too. So, anyway, great job, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
I guess sorry.
Hey, Mr. Mayor,
Huh.
you remember me, I sat there and talked to you
Yeah.
over there at the Festival of Trails. I wrote you that nice letter.
Yes. Name
Oh,
and
yeah.
address for the
Oh, yeah,
record.
408 East Shawnee Street, here in Gardner. I wrote the mayor a letter here back in June, and Christy Harris, and so does Troy Roberts know this. And the 5-year plan's great, guys, but we need to plan one more thing. And it needs to, I told the mayor we need a bridge over the railroad tracks, not under it, over it. And I'd like to see, in a 5-year plan, maybe they should sit there and look at one, and not on the west side of town, not at Moonlight, forget about Moonlight, where CenturyLink's telephone office is on Main Street, the lot next door to it, the big vacant lot, that's got the beat-up cars in the backyard and the fenced area that were sold once, still there. I think it'd be about 48-foot wide, swath of ground, up over the tracks. And yes, I think we could build it over the wires, or else have the, Kansas City power line, wherever we got the wires, bury them over there. We go over the railroad tracks instead of going under them, because you can't go under them, because you end up having a water pump, drainage pipe. Build up over the tracks, you got enough drainage to go from Main Street to the tracks, and the other's cornfield be on the other side, and that'll probably be developed yet in years later with that school over there, so I figure, put it in there now before they start building houses over there, so they got a place to come back and forth across the track besides fight the trains at Moonlight and try and go over to Center Street. It would be better for the school district, better for the police department, better for the firehouse. Instead of sitting at the railroad tracks down in Moonlight, and you sit there and you say, okay, this one's gonna go by, now we got another one. And if you guys sit there in town and watch these things go through town, and when they come out of the yard, they're not coming out of the yard very fast. And they got going in the yard, they're slowing down before they get to Moonlight. You gotta sit there longer. And business is gonna grow. That thing's gonna boom more quicker than you think it's gonna boom out there. You'll probably look for a third rail downtown within the next 10 years to go downtown. It may not be in the planning stage now, but it'll be here in 10 years. So I think the next 5 years, the planning guys should look at it, propose to build a bridge over the tracks. I already wrote a letter to DOT, KDOT. Mr. King sent me a nice letter back. They have no intention of building a bridge anywhere but Waverly Road and 207th Street. That's too far out of town, to me.
Yeah.
There's nothing Waverly but a gravel road right now, and it'll grow later, but right now, we have problems here. And maybe not everyone in here would agree with me, but I think it's something that the town should look at as a whole. And maybe we should go after some DOT money. Johnson County likes to spend money over there in Overland Park and Leewood. Streets don't even need to be repaired with blacktop. So I think we could probably get some of Johnson County money over there. You know, I'm sorry to say it to you that way, that's the way I look at it. I work for an Apple store over on the south side of Kansas City, and I drive that area. I know where the streets are all tore up and ate up. They don't fix those, they fix the other ones in the rich area. So I know what goes on. But you guys, we need to look at it as a whole. I'm sorry to say it to you in front of this discussion, but last 2 weeks I was in here when you guys were talking about the bulletproof glass and glass over here, and I thought to myself, that's kind of a dumb idea. You just go put a metal detectors walking in the door. These walls are all drywall. This guy here put a hole through every one of these walls in here, and there's no protection against anyone. I spent 23 years in the Army. I know what those holes will go through. They'll go through those drywalls. That 9mm pistol he's got in there, or 40mm, he'll put a hole through this wall. Not through brick, but through the drywall will. But, you know, I'm just letting you guys know how I feel. And Chris Harris knows about it, so does Troy. And Mr. Mayor, I think that you got the letter.
Yes, I certainly
But
do.
thanks for your time.
Thank you, Stan.
Sir, we need to get your name for the record. We didn't get your name.
Oh. But Steve Mtg. Can you spell last name? Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the previous comprehensive plan did have what was a viaduct for White Drive, which is the area he's talking about. But we do need a second access point to that part of town that's besides Moonlight Road. We didn't address that in this comprehensive plan, correct? That was not addressed, but his point is very valid, and that is, especially now with the increased amount of traffic going into and out of the intermodal, we have a lot of slow traffic coming down the second track going in, and it's only going to get worse as we have higher volumes. So,
Was that in a comprehensive plan or was it in a transportation plan?
And there's David Green sitting there.
I don't recall.
You don't recall? That was worth a shot.
I know it was in the
I
OA
think
plan.
Steve's right,
Yeah.
and it was in something, and I was
Yeah.
trying to find it the other day, and I couldn't find it in the comprehensive plan, and then I thought maybe it was in one of the transportation.
Yeah.
I thought it was, and I thought it was with, when you said viaduct, I always said viaduct, the bridge over. I think they were talking about underneath.
Yeah, that was actually part of the intermodal contract that we were going to have with BNSF. They were actually going to help to grade that out so we could put a viaduct under there for White, but that didn't happen, obviously.
Say less.
Yep.
Anyone else from the audience? Anyone else from the dais? And you know what, I forgot something during council updates. I need somebody for, a council member to volunteer to assist with airport board, airport commission interviews.
I'll do it, I did it last time, I can do it again.
Okay,
That's, all right.
so Jeannie, and the council vice president.
So I just to kind of package this up, when can they expect answers to this stuff back to them?
I'd like to provide you a response after tomorrow, after I have an opportunity to kind of meet with staff and see exactly what we're gonna need to put together.
Okay,
Yeah.
if we could,
We got this pretty late.
right, no, and I think a lot of the
We really have-
information
yeah.
over the years, I mean, I think I've heard some of the details, but it probably hasn't all been packaged together, so.
Right.
So can you
I'll send you an
provide
update.
council an
Yes.
update, and then I assume you get it to Debbie and she
Yes,
can.
we'll provide a council update.
And then, then, once that happens, then what? I mean, I guess is my next question, do we have another work session where we have some discussion about these specific questions, or?
I think that what might be called for is not even a work session. Let's do something that's literally more interactive. Let's get out from behind the dais and go sit at the tables and let's work with some people. Have a meeting maybe in January for this, have updates in January and February and March as the other studies are completed, and go forward that way.
I would almost break it up to, like, different clusters of tables, one for utilities, one for public works.
No, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, one for transportation.
Let there be an opportunity for people to rotate amongst the table.
Absolutely.
And that would include, governing body.
Well, okay, so here's my concern, and I'll use the senior center as an example. I think there were some questions that were presented from the senior center, read out, but I also think that was one of the items that everybody kind of agreed, hey, listen, we do think that there's some opportunity to make some improvements, we get that. So what I don't wanna do is us to be in March or April and kind of trying to get all of this stuff done, versus if there's some things on here that, because the $50,000, we don't know, I mean, I know, Cheryl, that was kind of a number, you know, it was like,
Right.
hey, we'll invest $50,000 in the senior center. So I guess what I'm looking for is, are there items on here, there's some opportunities for us to go out and maybe spec some things and get some bids? It doesn't cost, it's staff time, but other than that, it doesn't cost us anything to get more details for those sessions, rather than just having these brainstorming sessions.
Certainly, certainly.
Sure.
So, I guess, so I'm asking it, at the next meeting, can we identify maybe a couple of those things where we can give staff some direction and say, okay, for the senior center, please go and pull this together, then when we have these additional meetings, we have all of those details.
Well, and I kind of wonder if maybe we should be, because some of this stuff has been budgeted for 15 already, so it only makes sense we can go ahead and start pulling some of that stuff together. But also, I saw in a lot of these things where an answer that might be for the first question, you're going to be able to use the same answer on a number of different questions. So while we had 284 rows worth of content there, sometimes there's going to be answers that will be applicable to more than one of the items. So I think we narrow it down, we get a little bit more information for 15, but we really probably ought to be talking about 16 as well, because.
But that puts things on, but to Christie's point, and just use the senior center as an example, if there's consensus to move forward with that project, and we ask staff to put all the information together, at that point, we're creating a council action form that can be presented as part of the agenda with the same information that's still available. We could do it in a time frame that might have more opportunity for input, but it's the same workflow as what we would have. They're putting the information for an action
Right.
form for approval. So you present that, and maybe that's an item that we have 2 weeks of citizen review time available for. If they'd like to ask questions beforehand, they most certainly could, but what would we gain from the process of just extending it longer on a project like that? Now, some of these aren't in the same mold. So the question then is, do we spend some time and actually green light a project to move forward
Yeah.
for a council action form?
Mhm.
We look as a council and say, based on what we've seen, the questions, we've answered a couple of things that came up from the presentation tonight.
Yep.
We think it's time to move forward. Can you put together a council action form that allows to do that as part of the plan?
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
some,
because-
yeah, I'm sorry.
No, well, I was gonna say, there are some things on here that you're gonna naturally have to go to that level of
Yep.
detail
Right.
to get the answers to these questions, so that's my
Right,
big question,
exactly.
is just, can
The
we?
electric pieces, some of these things
Right.
that weren't contested in the lease, that are things that truly it's time to put all the information together to move forward on. We're delaying that, but really, we may not need to do so.
Yeah, this is one of the things I had a concern about when they were talking about March. I'm thinking there's some items in here that
Right.
are low-hanging fruit that the citizens that came together and did the review said, we have no problem with this, you know, we see the need. I don't see any reason why we couldn't start, you know, work on getting that together for
Yeah.
an action form.
In which case, and that still allows for citizen input.
I got a couple of orders, which is your math,
Yes,
but
yes,
for
please,
budget and
please.
finance,
Laura?
which is really important,
Right.
because you have a budget that's already adopted.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That
So
needs
we-
an
we've got two
adjustment,
things.
like,
You're right.
it's not quite that.
One of the things that concerns me, and I'm not saying concerned in a bad way, it's just another wrinkle, more education, is, for example, there was a few questions about why are some things cash, why are some things debt? And so part of this extended look for planning, there's a couple of things to consider. Number one, remember that it's never best practice to pay cash for something that has useful life of decades, because you're burdening current citizens now in their utility rates or their property tax or whatever it is we're buying now. If you use cash, future generations, future citizens are going to get a free ride. So why are some things cash? Maybe because they're little, maybe because they were easily affordable. One of the questions was, in the electric fund, why, what makes up the electric fund? The electric fund. The capital repair and replacement fund is separate. There's only one reserve fund. That was not bothered in any way. So utility funds still pay debt, if it's for the utility, because that's where the asset lives.
Yes.
So asset, depreciation, debt service, all of it goes together in the fund in which it's created. So when you're talking about some of these things,
I see you back
we
there.
might want to consider, remember also, when we do debt service, you get greater efficiency by bundling projects so that it's marketable competitively, and we get better cost efficiency for our consultants, our financial advisors, our bond counsel, and all the people it takes to make a bond issue. So when you're planning, some of those things are merely placeholders so that we can do just that, planning. Because if you're syncing up, oh, look, we've got 3 or 4 projects that makes a big enough bond issue to get economy of scale and all the bang for the buck and all those things, that's part of the planning. Priorities change. Citizens want something different. Governing body wants something different. An opportunity approaches that, holy cow, we'd much rather have X. Things change. So that was all the point of those out years. But I wanted to say that we're talking about very specific instructions from the governing body about, can we do this and can we do that? Well, yeah, but you might want to hold up on that, because I can tell you right now, come this spring, I'm planning on asking you to refinance the Hillsdale Treatment Plant, because you're going to save $1 gajillion in interest. But it's not a very big project by itself. It'd be great if we started adding some other components in. And so I think maybe when you're giving us the okay to move forward, you're cutting me off a little bit on the financing. So it all plays together, all these things meld together, and I can't write a council action form yet because I don't know.
Is that the?
And that's kind of,
Is that the specific reason why we're waiting until March?
No, there's several reasons why we're waiting until March. One, you definitely want to look at your finance and budgeting component. But the other piece is, we have several key pieces of work underway that we're going to be able to use to determine what kind of financing we need to do projects. So, we really need to kind of give benefits of water assessment, water plant assessment, wastewater plant assessment, electric utility assessment. There are several things that we're doing. Pavement management, when we start to talk about what do you want to do with streets, sidewalks, parking lots, that's part of pavement management assessment. So there's information that we won't have in time to be able to move it forward until after we get some of those assessments completed.
Real quick, Lee, we're gonna go in order here. Clint, you had your hand up before Laura got started. Debbie, you're on deck.
I'm not going anywhere.
Lee, you're in the hall.
Sorry, I didn't, hey, Clint, 136 North Cedar. That's the kind of stuff we were, I guess, wanting to know. With the first presentation, I think it was, you talked first on the CIP, like a couple weeks ago. We were under the impression that this was like a bundled plan, all or nothing kind of a thing. If that's not the case, that's something we needed to know, or that's the impression that we got as a citizen group. You were saying bundling them and to make, right.
Depending on what it is.
But that would be, right, and that makes sense to us, or to me. I'm gonna speak for myself now. That makes sense, but that's the stuff that we need to know. If you're bundling something, put a priority list on it or something, so we know, hey, this makes sense to go with that. Involve us more, I guess is what I would ask.
Thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
I guess for me, we're kind of getting wrapped up. From my perspective, if something's a priority, it's a priority, and we'll have to figure out the funding.
Right.
You know, and so that's why I'm saying, like, I'm not suggesting that we're gonna go forth and, like, the senior center is gonna be done. I'm saying that to answer some of these questions, we have to clearly define what it is we're going to do. Like, you're sending a project out for bid, so why can't we go ahead and do that? That doesn't, I mean, like I said, that doesn't require money to do that, it's staff time, I understand that, so it's about maybe shuffling some things, but that's what I'm asking. I'm not saying definitely move forward with all this stuff right now, I'm not saying let's figure out the financing, I get that we can't do that till later, but I'm just saying a lot of this stuff, a lot of the details that are being asked for, I don't think we can get to until we get to that next level.
Well, and I think that between now and the next council meeting and the council meeting after that, I mean, we're gonna have a chance to look over some of the information. We're gonna be able to compare the information that we've got in the CIP that was proposed versus the information we got from the citizens. We're probably going to have more questions and we're going to be putting a finer point on some things in the weeks and months to come, heck, probably even before the end of the year. So, we made a conscious effort to not try and get everything done this evening and spell it out over a period of months, and I think that's the way that we're going with it. But yeah, let's take the information that we got and study it, so that next council meeting, we have council updates, maybe some people have some input about direction that we can be giving to staff about just these things. And Debbie?
I think the whole positive spin that I think I had of this whole evening just ended, Laura, when you talked. And I'm not trying to be rude to you, but I am so upset, and I'm speaking for myself, not the group. We're trying to be very clear what we're speaking for. We're not stupid. There are things that I understand. There are things that other people understand. We should be able to ask a question and get an answer. If you've got things in your head that you're bundling and you're putting together, is it a secret? Can you not share that? I can comprehend some of that, okay? And I feel like I want the citizens to be given a little more credit that we can ask intelligent questions, you give us an answer, but I'm dealing with a group of citizens that put questions together. It wasn't Debbie Hickman's questions. So you're going to have questions that come from that whole part of the group. Please don't discount us that we aren't smart enough to figure out what's going on, that we can't research. I'm very disturbed that it had to end what I consider to be a poor end.
Actually, I kind of want to speak to that a little bit. I mean, government, while not a traditional business, there is the business of government, and a lot of that has to do with things like planning and municipal finance. And I don't discount the intellect of any of the people that have been here this evening presenting on behalf of the citizen group. You know, and I don't doubt anybody's ability to use the Google machine like Lee was talking about, to get information. But, the business of running a city, a municipality, is a fluid operation, and things change. And actually, when it gets to municipal finance, I mean, at a certain point, you go through the information that you get from somebody like Ellers that Bruce Kimmel puts together for us. Mm-hmm. Or you start looking at ordinances that are written so that we can bond. And I'm not saying that, Debbie, you or anybody else can't figure all that out, but in the effort, in the interest of moving forward and financing things, Laura and the finance department has saved us hundreds of thousands, if not billions of dollars in refinancing city debt. They're experts in this. Now, if we can share more information, we ought to. But at the same time, let's not. I don't want somebody to feel like we're looking down on anybody just because we've got municipal finance expertise inside the organization that might not be available outside. So, but actually, Lee wanted to say something, and then we've got Steve on deck.
Yeah, Lee Moore, 521 East Dogwood. I think I can clear something up, maybe. The debt versus cash question on the electric, specifically on replacing T1, it wasn't a question of should it or should it not be debt. It's just simply, very simply, a question of this, on this form that's in the CIP, it says funding sources, electric fund, $1.5 million. And then at the very top of the page, it says debt. So that's all we were asking for, is some clarification of why there's a disparity there. If it says electric fund as a funding source, then to us it meant like, well, that must be out of the electric fund, must be cash. So,
we can clarify that. It would be debt payments out of the electric fund.
Debt service.
So that's all we were asking for.
From the electric fund.
It wasn't really, we weren't questioning whether or not something should be debt or cash. It was just, we wanted clarification.
So miscommunication on both sides.
Yeah.
It
So
certainly wasn't meant to be
that's all I have.
rude, it was just clarification for our instructions.
Yes. Steve, did you, I saw you there for a second, I thought you had a question answered, I was like, oh boy.
Steve McNair, 528 North Elm. Laura, I had a question for you. I'm just a little confused. At what point do we look at the advantage of, the advantages of debt, I guess, versus cash? I'll bring up a specific question that happened tonight. For example, like this resurfacing of the pool slides. Is that something we would pay cash for, or is that something we would finance on long-term debt?
It's already been financed with long-term debt as
Okay,
part of
but
the rest of the
here's my question. This is where I'm kind of confused. That probably has a useful lifespan of maybe 5, 6 years, 10 years at the most. Why would we put that on 20-year debt? That's like going to the grocery store and buying your groceries with a credit card that you're gonna pay on for 30 years,
We
not 20
didn't put
years.
it on 20-year debt, we put it on 8.
Okay, I'm just
Right.
confused, you know, and I guess, you know, I would hope that we're not putting things on debt that, you know, that we're gonna be paying on beyond the useful life of that product or service, because that doesn't seem to make sense to me. Maybe I'm just one of the stupid citizens, but, you know,
No.
It's a
No,
great
and
question.
there again, nobody thinks
Yeah,
the citizens are stupid.
in a way, I kind of felt like we were talked down to a little bit here.
Oh, well, I think I probably speak for everybody at the dais. Nobody intended to do that if we did.
I think, Mr. Mayor, I think what would help a lot of us to understand, you know, what's going on here is when we start having these talks, you know, discussions about something that we're paying cash for, or we're financing on debt or bonds or whatever, I'm kind of simplistic. I kind of look at it as either paying cash or a debit card versus putting something on a long-term finance or a midterm finance like a credit card or a mortgage. If it's something that has a useful life of 1 or 2 or 5 years, if we're looking at putting that on debt or bonds or, you know, whatever we're borrowing money on for longer than the useful life of that product or service, it doesn't seem to make sense to me. And maybe, I'd like to hear just how you look at that. It would be very helpful for me.
What she said earlier is that's exactly what they look into, is the life expectancy of a product or service or capital expenditure versus, and that's how we evaluate that. That's the task that we as a council look upon for the financial resources that we have available through our bond council and everyone to see the total cost of ownership per product.
Heath, I understand, I'm not trying to disagree. What I'm saying is I was a little bit confused as to, you know, as to when we were saying, well, you know, it just makes sense to put stuff on debt. You know, I'm just trying to understand, when does it make sense to finance something, and when does it make sense to pay cash? You know, and maybe we need to pay cash that would go on some things, and you know, I don't maybe look at it as giving people down the road a free ride, but you know, I guess I'd look at it as, you know, does it make sense financially, you know, to finance stuff that would be beyond the useful life of the product or service? That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think in my opinion, we're talking about financing, and we haven't even nailed down the project.
Right.
So
Yes, you're right.
I feel like, I mean, I think Laura was just giving some insight into,
Context.
I mean, even within financing, I mean, we can send it out for bond and have people vote on it. We can bring it into, I mean, there are so many discussions, but the key is, what projects are we going to do?
What are we funding?
And when?
Yeah, yeah. You could also, you know, talk about lease versus buy, and I'm not gonna get into that, but, I mean, there's thresholds, there's certain time periods of useful life, there's certain, you know, obviously, that's the reason why we have a finance staff, is to do that analysis and make those decisions. So, you know, but the policy is really what we need to focus on here. What's the priority of our capital improvements? What's important to the citizens? What's a need versus a want? What's a, you know, that's the stuff that we as a collaborative have to come up with, and I'm glad we started the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else? We don't need any action, nobody else is coming forward. I think we're good now.
Thanks.
Good night, everyone.